Good afternoon, all you college football fans. This is Sean McCoy with the Talking Truth podcast out here on the West Coast, Eugene, Oregon. And this is the day after our de facto Civil War game, even though it's not technically Civil War anymore since we're not playing on Thanksgiving weekend in November like we are normally finishing out the regular season. It was still the Civil War. I mean, Oregon came ready. Oregon State was definitely as ready as they probably could have been. They obviously have a lack of talent compared to Oregon, and their defense is pretty thin. So once we got through that first quarter, where Oregon definitely had some struggles on offense, just basically missing some pretty sweet, potential plays way downfield. Dante Moore had some passes that he was just, barely off on, and we didn't connect. But that first touchdown for Oregon to DeCorey Moore was fantastic. I mean, what a snatch! What a fight to get that touchdown. I mean, it was by the hair of the chinny chin chin. And DeCorey Moore out there on the field was a great sign. It was what we really wanted to see, what we needed to see today. The day after, just reflecting on how it's nice to see him healthy enough to play. It's nice to see him and the coaching staff confident in his ability to get ready for that Penn State game coming up this weekend. Technically 6 days away now. Oregon's going to be going to Happy Valley and playing Penn State. That's going to be game day. Of course it's going to be game day. It's the biggest matchup by far, and this is going to be the first week that Oregon is actually going to get some proper national attention and shine from everybody, having the game day crew out there, and it's going to be a whiteout. It's going to be a night game. It's going to be probably the most viewed game of the weekend, I would think, with a lot of the SEC fans also praying for Oregon to lose, knowing that Oregon's just a nasty, nasty team, and thinking that Penn State's always going to be that second tier elite status in the Big Ten, and that's a good team that the best team in the SEC is probably going to be able to beat in the playoffs. At least that's how they're viewed by a lot of the national, I guess, analysts and a lot of the fans. But Oregon came in the polls today at 6th, so they stayed exactly where they were after a 41-7 blowout. That first quarter for Oregon wasn't fantastic. There was definitely some misses on defense. There were some zone issues, basically just communication. So our young dudes that are defensive backs, they are getting real experience in every game that they're playing. Every snap is more for them to catalog and to utilize for what they're going to be taking into the rest of their careers. How they're going to learn, how they're going to adjust. And I think our coaching staff's going to dial that in. I think that they're going to be ready to go against Penn State. I think that experience is going to pay off. I think that Oregon's defensive backs have the talent. They have the speed, the strength, and the length to be able to keep up in man coverage, which this might be the most man coverage that Oregon's going to have played under Dan Lanning up until this point. I think that stopping the run is going to be essential. It's going to be the first priority for the Oregon staff. I think that the DBs are going to be able to, hold their own against the Penn State receivers and their, tight ends. I think that that's going to be a matchup that's going to be crucial in this game. I think that there's going to be a lot of emphasis on stopping the run, bringing the linebackers down, stacking the box, bringing the safeties down to help out in that run game. And I think that Oregon's geared up and ready to do it. They haven't shown a ton of that type of defensive scheming throughout the first 4 games of the season, but they have definitely been ramping that up and showing that they have the ability to come down in the rush game and stop, big explosive plays from happening. Not many plays get past Dylan Thieneman. The guy's a stud, There's a reason why that guy has position and gets so many snaps for Oregon, because he really comes and lays the wood when it's his turn to tackle somebody. It's if you get past Bryce Betcher, and Bryce Betcher right now leading the team in tackles. There's no surprise there. The guy's a ball hawk. But we also have Jerry Mixon, who is playing a lot. I mean, just at the top of his game right now. Showing why the Oregon defensive coaching staff has so much faith in him to be able to make adjustments in game and play by play to break off and jump those passing lanes that he's seeing. And I mean, he's had 2 interceptions in the second and third game. He had 1 each, and he was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week last week. And he had a couple of really sweet pass breakups against Oregon State, which is, exactly what you want to see from your linebacker, if not, exceeding past expectations. So I think with the tandem of Mixon and Betcher going out there and shutting down anything that's coming over the middle and then helping out in that run defense, is going to be huge. And I think that's going to be a place where Oregon succeeds. Fingers crossed. Something about me, I don't want any injuries to ever happen to any player, any team of any significance. I don't wish anybody injuries, even the teams that I despise and really have a lot of dislike for. So I hope everybody stays healthy in this game. I hope that Oregon can get Noah Whittington back on the field. It looks like they're, holding him off the last 2 weeks, keeping him off the field, even though he's been dressed and ready to play, essentially. It looks like they're just trying to get him as healthy as possible so he can hopefully, hit that run game as hard as he can for Penn State and, get as many yards as he can, because that guy has explosivity on top of vision. And I think that it's going to be, I'm just excited to see him back on the field, really. I think a lot of people are. And it was really, really cool to see Mekhi Hughes get his first really nice run for Oregon yesterday against Oregon State. He's been, obviously talked about a lot as maybe a disappointment or underperforming compared to what expectations were nationally for him by not really seeing many touches because Oregon's running back core is so deep and they rotate so many guys. And I mean, when you're running 6-7 guys at that spot throughout a game, it's going to be hard to get the touches, especially if the other guys are, getting more yards. And in the first 3 games I saw Mekhi Hughes playing, it looked like he was not keeping his head up and looking for the gaps, looking for the holes that were opening. He didn't have any patience. He was running into the rear ends of the Oregon O-lineman, or he was running right into, the D-line and just going down. And that's not something that you want to see from an Oregon running back who has all the strength and ability that we know that Mekhi has. We know he's a stud when he gets the rock and he has the scheme down and he knows where he's supposed to go and he can exploit those gaps. So seeing some of that yesterday was awesome. It was just great to finally be able to cheer for that guy. Like, yes, powerful first down. And he's also, I think, going to be a weapon that we can use as, that receiver. If he's great in pass protection, all of our guys, all of our young, it's the most amazing thing about Oregon's running back core is that all of our running backs, including and especially our true freshmen, have been phenomenal in being able to pick up the rusher and set a block. I mean, when you can lay a serious block and give Dante Moore that much more time to find his guys or let those routes develop, or just even, an extra half second to read what the defense is doing and then make his adjustment. I mean, that's huge. That's I mean, obviously that's the core of a really good passing protection scheme. So when you do that, you get successful when you have an accurate, strong quarterback like we have in Dante Moore. I mean, Dante is, in my opinion, the Heisman front runner right now. I know that John Mateer is obviously on the national scope for being that guy. He's probably got the most Heisman votes right now if we were to vote for Heisman in week 4. But I'm not impressed with John Mateer in several factors. I think that his decision making is questionable. He's definitely thrown already at least 3 interceptions in the season. He's able to scramble, and that's really clutch for that Oklahoma team. They kind of rely on getting those first downs when the pocket collapses and Mateer's being pressured and he needs to get out and he needs to get the yards that he can get for the team so they could, continue moving the chains. And he's been able to do that. That said, this last game that they just played against Auburn yesterday was one of the worst reffing games. I mean, the SEC's been able to produce in a long time. I mean, and that's saying something because the SEC refs are notoriously bad. They love to allow unnecessary contact, unnecessary roughness. They look the other way on pass interference at least 50% of the time. They rarely call holds on the offensive line when almost every play there's an offensive lineman straight up holding the defender and allowing the quarterback to deliver a ball or to throw it out of bounds and not get sacked. And that's something that's very unimpressive by the SEC. I think that's part of why you see the level of play at quarterback in the Big Ten looks so much more impressive than the level of play by quarterbacks in the SEC. And the Big Ten's gotten, I think the top 5 quarterback recruits committed to their schools in the last year. And some of those guys are starting. But it's, the ability to develop quarterbacks and the quarterback play that we're seeing transition from the Big Ten at the college level up to the NFL is much more impressive and striking compared to the guys coming out of the SEC and making it into the NFL and then, starting as rookies if they start as a rookie. And I mean, Oregon's at the top of the list for being able to produce NFL-ready quarterbacks right now. I don't think that there's any other program that can match what Justin Herbert and Bo Nix are doing right now as, rookie starters. And I mean, both of them set records in their rookie years. It was Herbert set the touchdown total for a rookie at 31 in his rookie year, and then Bo Nix set a record last year for second best ever at 29 touchdowns in his rookie year. So you're seeing great decision making. You're seeing the ability to get the ball thrown in tight windows and to avoid sacks. I mean, that's what NFL GMs and head coaches are looking for when they're looking to draft a QB or to find somebody to replace, somebody who's not performing up to the standards for an NFL program. So I'm really excited to see how the how the SEC tries to explain away their horrible reffing in the Auburn Oklahoma game. There was, the reffing was so atrocious that I think it actually cost Auburn the game, even though Oklahoma had, a very stout defense and did enough on offense to get the win. There was a huge swing with that fumble recovery for a touchdown that Auburn had that would have put them up 7. And they completely wiped that away. In fact, it was called a fumble on the field and a touchdown. And then after review, they decided that they had irrefutable evidence that it wasn't that. And so they wiped off not just a fumble and a turnover, an actual score off of that, which made all the difference in the balance of the score at the end of the game. Jackson Arnold definitely could have looked a lot better than he did look yesterday, though, for Auburn. I'm not an Auburn fan. I was at the national championship in 2010, and we were very, very close to getting that game to overtime. And the Ducks, their energy, their momentum was definitely playing the biggest factor at the end of that game until we missed the tackle, obviously. And the kid stayed up and got extra yards after we thought he was down. And then they kicked a field goal, at the end of the game to get the win. And I just don't like the SEC in general. There's, people that I respect and definitely think are elite and good competitors or good coaches in the SEC. That's, undeniable. But the national bias that the SEC gets and that propels and perpetuates every year from the SEC is just disgusting. The, fact that they were able to pay players for 2 decades when other teams in other conferences weren't allowed to, and that's how they bought their way to championship after championship, doesn't impress me. It doesn't sit well with me. It actually taints, I think, their dominance over the last decade and a half in the national landscape. And I think that the Big Ten is showing that, like, all right, well, when other programs are allowed to pay players, when we're allowed to do the same thing that the SEC's been allowed to do for so long, we're very successful. We have the talent, and we have the coaching, and we have the funds to put really good teams on the field. The last 2 national championships have been won by the Big Ten. In fact, there wasn't even an SEC team in those championship games. So, the wins in the Natty are starting to add up for the Big Ten. And the way it's looking right now, the Big Ten's probably going to have at least 1, if not 2 teams in the national championship again, depending on how the playoff brackets match out and everything. I guarantee that right now, am guaranteeing there will be at least 1 Big Ten player in the national championship, bar any horrific injuries. Injuries happen. We saw Indiana just destroy Illinois yesterday. They got a huge win, a big upset, won by 50 points, and that basically came down to, in my opinion, the 7 key injuries and or ejections for targeting in that Illinois defensive back group. I mean, losing 7 players in one game, the top 7 players in a group of 10 players that they had, there's just no coming back from that. I mean, Indiana exploited the hell out of that. That's a huge advantage for any team when the opposing team's defensive back group basically just, has to limp off the field or get carried off the field or gets, kicked off the field. So Indiana looked great. I mean, that's definitely looking like another good season for them up until this point, and the potential's there, obviously, with Mendoza at QB doing really good things, making great decisions, utilizing his wide receivers, which are very, very skilled. And I think that it's going to be one of those things where Indiana's going to get tested down the road. They have to come to Oregon, I think, in the next 3 weeks. So that's going to be their first true test. I mean, they played all of their games, I believe, at home up until this point. So, everybody's good at home. But are you able to travel? We'll see. We'll see how they do out here on the West Coast. We'll see how they handle that Autzen crowd and all of the energy that Oregon fans are going to bring to that game. Also, I am still not impressed with Miami. Miami they're a well-rounded team, it looks like, at this point, but I don't see them being the best of the best at all. In fact, they played teams that have looked very suspect. They've looked very disorganized. They've looked very confused. And Florida yesterday pushed Miami in that third quarter and got it within a 6-point game. It was like 7-13 in the third quarter. And they showed that they could hang with them with horrible quarterback play from DJ Lagway. It was not good. He's shell-shocked. The guy has definitely lost his swag, at least, and then also he's lost the confidence, and he's just not seeing the field the way he should. And apparently it's coming back to reps. The guy missed spring ball, which is where you get a lot of those reps, and then where you get a lot of the chemistry built up to be able to execute on offense. He's been dealing with injuries, but everybody deals with injuries, DeCorian Moore was injured this last week in practice on Monday, and there was a lot of questions circulating around the Eugene program, wondering if DeCorian was even going to see the field this week. He did. He started. He gave us our first touchdown. He also took several punt returns back. He was put in as our punt returner. Sorry. And it was nice to see that little switch up by Oregon, because Gary Bryant Jr. had 2 punt returns where he bobbled the ball and did not grab it cleanly out of the air, and basically had to fall on the ball and avoid a turnover. That's not anything you want to see, especially from an experienced guy like Gary Bryant Jr. I don't think that people are giving any credit to Oregon up until this point for looking as good as they've looked. They've been expected to be elite, but you still don't hear a fraction of the people nationally talking about Oregon that you do talking about every other program in the top 10. It's ridiculously overdone on all the other teams and underdone on Oregon. I mean, give them some attention. You know, they are performing at an elite level, yet they're just basically a side note, if that, in the national talks. So I really want to see Oregon come out against Penn State, look dominant, look focused, look ready, and look dangerous. I want them to be, you know, playing at the best of their ability. And I believe that Lanning, in his fourth year now at Oregon, has the focus and the strategy and the experience to get those guys ready for that game at Penn State. But as we know, traveling across the country and playing, it has its own disadvantages. There's quite a bit of, I think, advantage towards Penn State, at least from the betting standpoint that the betting agencies are setting right now. They gave them a 3.5 point favorability, so they're favored by 3.5 points right now against Oregon in that game. We'll see that line change over the week as the bets start to roll in. I think Oregon's definitely going to win this game. If I was a betting man, I would definitely put money on Oregon to win, especially at that 3.5 point advantage. You know, if you're going to give Oregon, Penn State 3.5 points to have to cover, I don't think they can do that. If Penn State does win, I don't see it being by more than 3 points. So let's see Oregon come out and do what they can do, and then, you know, we'll talk about how they looked after that game. I'll be very, very either disappointed, or I'll be very, very optimistic and happy, depending on the outcome of that game. Again, just want guys to stay healthy. That's it. Just stay healthy no matter win, lose. Please, just fingers crossed, no injuries for anybody, especially for Oregon, but I don't even want to see Penn State take one, and I definitely don't want them to use that as an excuse for why they lost. So I'm going to be watching a lot of stuff on Oregon and that Penn State matchup throughout the week. There's been tons of coverage already by Penn State podcasters and analysts breaking down that matchup coming up, since they had a bye week this last week. They didn't play yesterday. And Penn State's definitely worried about Oregon much more than I think Oregon has been concerned about Penn State leading up into this week. Now the gears have shifted. Lanning's already flipped the switch, and it's time to take that crew to Happy Valley and let the chips fall where they may. It's going to be a whiteout. I'm excited to see some green and yellow in that crowd, but I don't expect it to be, you know, a huge contingency that goes out there to Happy Valley, just because that's a rough place to even make it into travel-wise. If we have 10,000 people there, 10,000 fans in that crowd, that'd be impressive to me. If it's beyond that, that's going to be really impressive. But I think that Oregon's going to pack their own juice, and they're going to travel, and they're going to, you know, do what they do out there. And Dante Moore is going to make good decisions. He will be pressured. He's probably going to be pressured more than he's ever been up until this point. The Oregon O-line had one major screw up yesterday, and that was Alex Harkey, our right tackle, let a rusher get right around him and sack Dante. It's the first sack of the season. It was the only sack of the season on Dante. And then Harkey felt that little bit of pressure after that penalty on him, and he had a false start, I think, in the next drive or two drives after that when we were down in the red zone. Harkey will definitely take that as a slight on himself, and hold himself to a higher standard. That guy has a fire inside of him that's, it burns hot, and he's going to use that. I think that penalty, both of those, well, the penalty on the false start and then the sack he gave up, as fuel to come out and shove dudes around. So hopefully that shows up. I think that the rest of our O-line's played great so far. It's going to be really, really hard to create huge gaps against Penn State, especially for in the running game. But I think that our backs are going to stay fresh, and they're going to rotate in, and they're going to just keep pounding the rock until they find lanes that give them decent yardage. But you also have to worry about, if you're Penn State, that Oregon passing attack. And with DeCorey and Moore healthy and Malik Benson, Benson is awesome. The guy, yesterday, 2 clutch passes back-to-back that he caught that were definitely NFL-level passes. They were back shoulder on the sideline, and he just snatched the ball right out of the air. I'm like, dude, just keep showing us that, man, and you're already getting a lot of love from the NFL scouts. He's already kind of cemented himself as an Oregon guy, even though he's only 4 games into his Oregon career as a transfer. That's exactly what our team loves to see in a guy, is somebody who's just there to snatch the ball out of the air, that a lot of receivers can't make those catches. Malik Benson is definitely an elite pass catcher and a great route runner, and I think that he's got the talent to make the difference for Oregon with Evan Stewart down for the season. There's going to be some other huge games this weekend. I think Alabama plays Georgia. That's one I'm looking forward to. Alabama's looked really good up until this point, bar the rough start against Florida State. Ty Simpson is he's an offensive machine. The guy's out there completing a super high percentage of his passes and not turning the ball over. Georgia, Georgia's Georgia. They're dogs. They're going to fight. They definitely will, scrap out as many, I guess, tough plays as they can. They're going to make it hard on Alabama. They're going to rush them like crazy. They're going to blitz them a lot, I think, to put the pressure on Ty Simpson to make those passes. He's not going to have a ton of time back there to just sit there and pick their defense apart. So I look for the Georgia defensive coaching staff to really dial up some stuff to put the pressure on Simpson. But if Simpson can avoid, the pressure and get his passes off, it might be a really long, rough day for Georgia. So you never know what's going to happen in that game. I'm just looking forward to it as a fan that loves to see top-tier SEC teams take a loss. Either way, one of those teams is going to lose, and one of those teams is going to look like a top-tier team in the SEC. No surprise there. When you're playing the best of that conference and you get a win, the national, people, all the media are going to go crazy and say that you're, probably, if not the second best, the best team in the nation. Which I still can't believe that that's, being hyped up by national media as much as it is, as bad as the SEC has looked so far in this season and how poorly they finished last season off too. But we'll see. The playoffs are going to be the final test for the teams that think that they're awesome, like that they're going to win the natty or that they're the shit. And the playoffs last year were not kind to the SEC. That's what happens when you play against top-tier Big Ten opponents. And Notre Dame was pretty good last year. And so I don't see Notre Dame being in the playoffs this year, but they might claw their way in there. But I think the Big Ten has enough teams at the top to take out the top teams of the SEC at this point, again, barring injuries. But the Big Ten has been much more impressive to me to this point in the season against legitimate talent and or very underwhelming talent. They have dominated the way that they need to dominate and not shown a lot of the weaknesses and exposed themselves on offense and or on defense the way that a lot of these other teams have in the SEC. Oklahoma did not look fantastic. If Jackson Arnold wasn't a fucking statue hanging back there and not moving around at all, not adjusting to pressure, not having good pocket awareness, then Oklahoma definitely could have lost yesterday. If the SEC refs hadn't screwed Auburn on about 5 crucial plays. Oklahoma probably would have had an L yesterday. So that's something the SEC doesn't want to see. They don't want to see their top contenders taking losses early in the season like that. And they showed you they're going to make the calls that are going to give the advantage to the team that's supposed to win the games, whether or not they actually deserve to get the win. So another shitty week for the SEC, at least reffing wise, and nothing new there. There was some pretty cool outcomes that I didn't expect fully. Texas Tech taking down Utah in Utah, very impressive, but they have a very deep roster compared to what they had last year. But that's where that oil billionaire money comes in and definitely makes a difference in your roster. They bought a ton of dudes in the transfer portal this year, and it showed up, and that's where, when you pay $30 million for your roster, $30 million plus, you're going to get some pretty good talent, and it's on the coaching staff to assemble that talent and get that, group or that team up to game speed, and also develop the chemistry to make sure that they just go out there and play the way that they should play. So good on Texas Tech. The coaching staff's really coming through there. They've got that team to gel enough that they are clicking on basically all cylinders. Utah, sorry. I don't mind seeing you guys lose. It's old Pac-12, hate and dislike and grudges. Utah's never a team that I'm gonna root for. They just, I don't dig Utah. I don't like BYU for a lot of their policies that they set for players and how they are, extremely religious, and that they have their codes of conduct that, you're expecting these young men to abide by. If you want saints on your team, you might not want to have a football team. Young men are young men. They're going to do things that, super religious conservative people are going to judge and not like. But as long as they're not hurting people or their property, it's on you to kick them off your team, I guess, if they had premarital sex or other things that your religious tenets say are not acceptable. To me, I've got higher priorities for what I expect and abhor in a player's actions and activities and decisions. Not to go on a religious rant there, sorry about that. But, Utah lost. USC got a win. USC took down Michigan State. Michigan State had a horrific injury that's, slowed the game down. It was like about 20, 25 minutes of game stoppage. And then SC came out of that and scored a touchdown on the very next play. And then they continued to score touchdowns until the end of that game and put it out of reach for Michigan State, which is a good program. It's kind of sad to see Jonathan Smith leave the Beavers the way he did for Michigan State, but you can't blame that guy for wanting, almost double the money, I think, per year as a salary, and having much more available to him for resource-wise and just support from a program. Michigan State has, deep pockets, and they have really high standards and expectations. And so I think it was a, pretty good move for Jonathan Smith to go there and take his QB Hayden Childs there, who's also, very talented quarterback and somebody whose draft stock just keeps on rising. It's nice to see familiar faces out there playing and coaching up to a level that is at least entertaining. I don't like seeing blowouts. I feel bad for Oregon State, but I don't feel horrible for them. I have family members that are Oregon State fans, and I'm just like, I'm not going to rub it in your face that Oregon won. I'm not going to, gloat or anything like that. The numbers speak for themselves, and it's a sad state of affairs for the Oregon State program, the way that they are positioned right now, and their future doesn't look super bright. So I wish them success in the future, just not against Oregon. I'm very, very, very excited to see what Ohio State does at the Washington Huskies on Saturday too. If Oregon State can travel, if they can go into, that super loud, beautiful stadium that the Huskies have and pull out a win, that's going to be crazy impressive, because Washington is, they're tough at home. And for Penn State to travel out to the, Pacific Northwest and put it on the Huskies, it's going to be tough. So if you're looking for a game coming up that's, might be an upset, that should at least be entertaining, try to watch that Ohio State-Washington game. That's one that's definitely probably going to have some plays in it that are going to make some highlight reels either way, good or bad. And those are two teams that I want to see lose. So either way, I'm going to be happy. It's hard when two teams are matching up against each other that you don't particularly like, to root for either, any team, either team. But I'm definitely a Oregon, native and OG fan, and Washington is our rival. Fuck Washington. I want Washington to lose, but I would also love to see Ohio State lose and then have Oregon beat Washington at the end of the year. And since we don't play Ohio State this year, I mean, that'd be a fabulous outcome. So fingers crossed. Stay healthy in that game, boys, but somebody's going to lose, and I'm going to be there to enjoy whoever it is. I think that Clemson is definitely showing that they are not making the adjustments to this new era the way that everybody expected them to and predicted them to. It's pretty telling that they were the national championship favorite for a lot of media members and analysts coming into the season, and they basically could be 4-0 right now. They squeaked out a win against Troy. They look like shit. Dabo is totally emotionally on tilt right now. The guy had a 53-minute, press conference where I think over half of it was a rant this last week, talking about how if they don't want him at Clemson anymore, he'll move on and he'll keep coaching, and he's brought all the wins to Clemson that they've had and all the success, and he's ready to take that somewhere else, essentially. It sounds like there has been a lot of disappointment in their boosters and in the financial backing for Clemson, and that's something that kind of leaked out, was him already getting pressure from the the general manager of their team or the athletic director, and saying, hey man, we really want to see some better football from our team. We expect better football from our team, and him not really feeling supported and feeling threatened by the expectations that people have set for him and his team. I mean, what do you expect, Dabo? It's 2025. You had 2 national championships in the last decade. You're coming out here and you're losing to teams like Troy that you barely find a way to beat, and then you're getting smashed and beat up by Syracuse, which is not an elite program, at least this year. And there's definitely a lot of concern that is so appropriate for that fan base. I mean, shit, Dabo, you're not doing a good job of coaching and or getting the leadership established in your program to get those guys to gel enough to perform up to even a fraction, essentially, of their ability. There's a lot of potential that Clemson has. They have a lot of really, really good talent, and they just look like dog shit. So, that coaching spot there for Clemson could open up by the end of this season if they don't beat some teams that they, should beat, and or beat some teams that they might not, be expected to beat. I think that they have some worse tests definitely coming up, and that schedule in the ACC looking a little bit tougher now when you see, the success that Florida State's having, Miami's having, Georgia Tech's having, there are some teams in that conference. And Cal's looking amazing for the ACC. I mean, Jaron Kiwe Sagapolatele, the freshman quarterback for Cal, is a young stud, and he wanted to start. That's why he decommitted from Oregon after he saw Dante Moore in practice. He was like, "No, that's not a place I'm going to be stepping into anytime soon as QB. So I'm going to jam out to Cal. They want me, and I'll get a bag from them, and I'll be able to show my talents." And he has shown his talents so far. Good on him, and good on Justin Wilcox and his coaching staff. But that is definitely going to be a conference that's going to be seeing some pretty amazing battles in the near future, and the matchups that didn't look so, I guess, spectacular or exciting in the preseason or even in the first couple weeks look like they might actually be really electric and exciting games when they come up. So that's another team to follow, and kind of, I guess, I wish success for Cal being one of the ex-Pac-12 members. And I don't care for Miami. I don't like Mario Cristobal, the way he left Oregon, the way he lied, the way he cost us big losses just by being a dumbass, by making horrible decisions and not being aware and shitting away wins that we should have totally won. I mean, Mario is not the guy. And it really bothers me seeing him getting all this national, I guess, spotlight attention, where they're acting like he's some sort of guru and that they're just this dominant team that, could be world beaters. And I'm like, no, he'll mess it up at some point, and or they just don't have the depth that teams like Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and some of the teams in the SEC have. And so if you're going to struggle against Florida at home, you're not, top 5. But, I think they came in at number 2 in the rankings today. Oregon's at 6, and the gap between number 2 and 6 is literally like tenths of thousands in the voting numerics. So Oregon's not that far behind the number 2 spot. Literally, I mean, it's just fractions of points, basically, when you're getting into the thousands of voting points. So Oregon, with any decent showing at Penn State, should be at least number 2, if not number 1 after this weekend. But they got to pull out the win, and they got to stay healthy. And with that, I hope that everybody has a great week. I wish you nothing but a long life and prosperity and great health. And I hope everybody's teams win this week, as long as your team isn't who Oregon is playing. Have a great week.